thank you very much for taking the time to come along to the webinar today. We really appreciate, we're all busy people at the moment, and I'm sure you all are. So thank you again for coming along. In terms of how this is going to work, my name is Jeannie Rain. I'm the Community Relations Manager at Banks, and I'm going to run through a presentation with you. It's a bit more detailed than the leaflet you received, tell you a bit more about our plans for Barton or our proposals. I've also got on the call two of our technical team, Joe Perkins, who is our development planner, and also Stephen Miller, who is our technical manager. So what I would ask is, I'll go through the presentation. There's an interactive section, which I hope you'll get involved with. And if you have any questions or comments related to anything that I'm discussing, please just pop it in the chat function. And at the end, what we'll do, if there's any questions that have been raised or comments that need addressed, between myself, Joe and Steve, we'll take those at the end of the call. What I would say is, if there's anything we can't answer today, we will take it away. We'll make sure you get a full response, and we intend to use all of the questions raised and pop them up on the website as a frequently asked questions section, so that all of the community out there can find out answers to the questions that they may have, and hopefully you'll have some good questions for us. Obviously, this is part one of our consultation. We have an in-person exhibition tomorrow. Nice to actually get back to seeing people again since COVID has taken over for the last 18 months. But obviously we wanted to make sure that for those people who weren't keen to meet in person or couldn't because of other commitments, this is the opportunity to get the questions answered that you have. In terms of meeting the team, I've already mentioned that we have Steve and Joe on the call. Steve's the technical manager in the middle there, and Joe is our development planner. I'm sure between the three of us we can take any questions that you have, but again, if not, we will get the answers back to you. I think what I'd like to start with is the approach that Banks Property take to development. And we've worked as the Banks Group for over 40 years across multiple business areas, making sure that any development that we bring forward works as a win-win for both the business and the community. We're really proud and believe it's a fundamental part of any development that you work with the community and look to make sure that there's good engagement, good benefits, and just quite frankly being a really good neighbour. And so that was the reason why when we first brought forward this development, we sent out a newsletter. Now, interestingly, I've had a lot of feedback from the local community, which has been fantastic to see. But some of the questions we've had is, why have you told us about this before you've submitted a planning application? Now, the reason we do this is that we fundamentally believe that the local community should be able to influence all developments that come forward. And so if we were to launch the proposals and send a leaflet out to local residents after we'd submitted a planning application, that's past the point where you can actually influence the designs and how we bring forward the development and to discuss the things like the benefits that it could bring. Whereas if we do it as we've done, if we present a newsletter to local residents, a good few weeks, few months in many cases, sometimes few years in advance of submitting a planning application, then it actually gives you guys the opportunity to influence that. And that's what we're really keen for to happen today. We really want your feedback about what our proposals are. You guys live closest to the site. You live in that community, you're part of that community, and you have the knowledge that we would like to know about in terms of what's right for your community. And so throughout this, please don't be shy. Any comments that you have, please let us know about them. The other side of development with care, and I touched on it before, is making sure that the community closest to our developments benefits from our developments. Now, obviously, on property developments that we bring forward, there's lots of ways we can do that, and hopefully you'll see from our indicative master plan that I'll show in a few slides, we actually have really thought about what could benefit the community in terms of the development itself. But actually, there's another part to it. As a business, our owner, Harry Banks, who started the business over 45 years ago, really believed that the local community surrounding developments that his business bring forward should benefit. And so he set up, at the time, it was very much an ad hoc community fund based around our coal mining sites. And then it's become a much more formal thing in collaboration with the County Durham Community Foundation, where local charitable organisations surrounding our sites can apply for grants of up to £5,000 for a multitude of things. It's obviously capital cost things that basically support and provide assistance to local community groups that do so much good stuff in every community that we work in. And so I would encourage you, if you know any local groups that could benefit from this, please pass my details on to them. I've provided the link there at the bottom of the slide, and obviously I'll share these slides afterwards for everyone who's attended. We really do like to see communities benefit from us being, bringing developments forward. One of the things we do, now this slide isn't the indicative master plan that I mentioned before. This is just to give you a flavour of what actually goes into bringing forward a master plan. So I've described it as a site analysis, but what really it is, it's the principles that define how we actually come about with the designs that we do. And there's multiple factors that come into that. So you look at things like existing topography, the topography of the land, existing features such as hedgerows and trees, footpaths, bridleways, the way the water flows off the site. All of these things factor into why we design a proposal the way that we do. And this is the sort of drawing that our architects come up to help us understand why the design has been designed in that way. And this is what you result in. Now, as you can see, I've clearly called this an indicative master plan. We're really keen to get your feedback on this and to see what you think about it, and if there's anything that you think we're missing or that we could improve on. Some of the things that include that are, you can clearly see for any residents on the call who live on Hawkstall Road or close to Hawkstall Road, we've retained the vast majority of the trees that separate Hawkstall Road to the site itself, as well as introduced, as you can see on the drawing, we're planning on planting a significant number of trees on the site, and also right in the middle of the site there, something which I think is quite unique, and I hope something that the community will appreciate, particularly given the other charities in the area who do kind of farming, and they've got the community veggie patches, I would call it. We've got a community orchard there in the middle of the site, as well as significant open green space for people to enjoy, biodiversity areas, wildflower meadows. I'll put my teeth in, apologies about that. We're also really keen, and it's one of the things you'll see amongst all of our developments across the business, is to improve connectivity for people and actually trying to get people out of the cars a little bit. So there's lots of footpaths and cycleways across the site connecting to the existing network. The large cream areas that you can see are basically our proposal of where the homes would be. When I say it's an indicative master plan, I appreciate you can't see each individual plot. We're not at that stage yet. In fact, as it says, that's indicative, so it may not end up looking like this, but this is kind of our first draft of what we think would be a really suitable development for this site and location. The other things that are really important, which I will come on to a bit more in a further slide, and I mentioned it before when we talked about water on the site, you'll see there's some in the top corner and in the middle of the site, there's these kind of blue-green areas, and these are the sustainable urban drainage. So basically water attenuation, so that's how we manage water on site, and the surface water that's there. And obviously the key thing and the feedback we received from the community was from the newsletter was around access into the site. Now on this drawing, you can clearly see that there's two access points. One is from Brigg Road and one is from Hawkstall Road, which obviously leads straight down onto Tofts Road. And we're keen to hear your own thoughts on that. When we come up with these designs and when we submit a planning application, a really important part of that is conducting a suite in fact, of technical assessments. And that basically tells us the suitability of the site. So in this case, when I talk about the roads, we've had a thorough, or we're in the process of having a thorough transport assessment conducted. And that'll tell us how the highways network can handle the additional vehicles from this site and what will be best in terms of access. And this is what they've come up with. So we're keen to hear a bit more feedback from everyone on that. What I'll do now, if it's okay with everyone, I'm just gonna, when I mentioned earlier, we're really keen to get some interactive parts, because I know there's nothing worse than sitting on a PowerPoint and listening to someone speak for half an hour. We're just gonna do a quick poll. Now, I appreciate there's not a lot of you on the call, and hopefully, if technology doesn't fail me, it will work. Really keen to understand from you, from what I've just said there in terms of the indicative master plan, from your perspective, what are the most important factors for us to consider? And I'd appreciate if you just tick the ones that matter to you. So hopefully that poll should have appeared on your screen. And if you could click away, hopefully I'll see your responses as they come in. I think that's everyone who's responded, so that's brilliant. And then I'll close the poll, and hopefully what you'll see is the results will come up. Yes, we have, brilliant. So everyone thinks the location of vehicle access points are important. A buffer between the site and Hawkstall Road is really important, and hopefully when I come out on the next slide, you'll see that we really have considered that, and open recreational space. I hope whoever responded to that can see that that has been quite a founding principle that we've adhered to in the design principles here. There is an awful lot of green space on there, a lot of trees, a lot of maintenance of hedges and trees that are already there, the planting of a community orchard. So yeah, that's brilliant. What I'll do, I will hopefully again make this work, and I'll go back to the slide. It's interesting that there was 75% of people said the buffer between the site and Hawkstall Road was really important. And so what I'm going to show you now is a typical cross section of the site. And what you can see here is the relationship between particularly Hawkstall Road and the new development. Now, obviously, this is indicative and it is typical. It doesn't mean it'll be the same for every single development that we could develop should it come forward. But what you have on the left-hand side is an existing house on Hawkstall Road. The vast majority, if not all of them, if I recall from walking down the street, have long drives, and then they have the hedges at the end or their gates at the end, and a lot of them also have trees out of the front. And then you have the single carriageway, and in some places you do have a footpath in between the carriageway and the end of people's properties. That works out at about 21 metres, our architects have calculated. Obviously it's typical, it doesn't mean that's the case for every single property, but typically that's what it looks like. And then what we're proposing is, to the point where our site lies and when the first dwellings would appear, it's another 21 metres essentially that goes across. Now, one of the key things you can see is we've maintained the trees. We're obviously proposing to do a lot more tree planting ourselves. And then because of the topography of the land, it actually falls away on facing Hawkstall Road. So from line of sight, the development from Hawkstall Road will fall off. And the development, the houses will look lower than what they currently are. Now again, I caution that with, this is indicative. It doesn't mean that every dwelling that we develop would look like that. But once we're in a position, the way this works, we would go for outline planning permission. And then when a detailed planning application were to come forward, that's the point when these sorts of things, the fabric of the building, the specific layout of where houses would come forward. But hopefully, I appreciate the residents on Hawkstall Road, or those, in my opinion, and I'm sure from Banks's and the rest of Barn would agree, are those most impacted by this development. And so we just want to make sure that anyone, if they're on the call, who lives on Hawkstall Road, or any of the residents, have an opportunity to see what impact that could have on them, and hopefully we'll agree that it's been designed in a sensitive way. One of the things about bringing developments forward is that it does deliver significant benefits to communities, to the economy, and to the environment. And what I've done here is I've listed some of the things that we think are really important part of the development. So whenever you bring forward a sustainable urban drainage system, it obviously manages water really well. We're really fortunate enough in our business to have one of Steve's colleagues has been down to London as part of massive working panels at Westminster, designing these things and influencing what happens in London. As a business, we have a great reputation of coming forward with really advanced stages of sustainable urban drainage, and we've got examples across the northeast of that. We're really proud of the fact that as a business we are working, like everyone is, towards achieving net zero, and part of that is electric vehicles. And so every property we're proposing on this site would have an electric vehicle charging point at their homes. That's the future, that's the way we're going. And in amongst that, it's, as I mentioned earlier, it's improving connectivity. It's encouraging people to walk and cycle rather than getting in their cars. And the other side of climate change is providing habitats for wildlife, really good quality biodiversity. And things like the wildflower meadow, the community orchard, tree planting and maintaining hedgerows and creating new hedgerows is a really important part of our development. I've realised now I've gone through this entire presentation, I haven't once said how many homes it is, so I apologise about that, although I know it said it in the leaflet. So what we are proposing is it's up to 400 new family homes. Now, we always say up to, because that's the most we would bring forward. It will not go above that, you can be assured. But we just like to make sure that from an early stage, we don't pull the wool over people's eyes. I'm all too familiar with other developments that have come forward from other organisations who have said, you know, they're only going to develop 100 homes, and the next thing you know, there's 300 popping up. So we just like to make sure that part of our development with care approach is being honest from the beginning. Obviously, we will comply with North Lincolnshire Council's planning policy, which is 20% affordable housing on site. I've already mentioned the community orchard, which I think will be a fantastic thing for the community and local people to actually get involved, get outdoors. You know, we've realised now with COVID how important open green space is, and getting together with your community for something like this is really important, as will recreational open spaces, quite a techie term for play parks, quite frankly. So, you know, young people can get out and enjoy themselves. I've got a 12-year-old stepdaughter who, if I didn't force her to go out, would sit on a computer all day. And so I'm all too aware of the family issues that we have these days of getting children outdoors. And it's so important. And we've tried to factor that in to the development itself. I'm sure I don't need to tell anyone about the economic benefit that comes with development. It creates jobs, whether that's people, the brickies on site, or the supply chain that feeds into it. Local councils will obviously, with new residents moving into the area, as well as new homes, they'll get a new homes bonus from the development, and obviously additional council tax to help support council services. In any new development, with the addition of people coming into the area, it does give a much needed boost at times. I'm not saying Barton needs that, but for some communities, it does give a much needed boost for local shops, services and community facilities, which Barton does have a lot of good stuff. You know, you have some fantastic shops. You've been down the high street, I've had a look, there's fantastic community facilities, spoken to a lot of local community groups who are doing really good stuff, and hopefully the additional influx of people and investment in the area will be positive. I mentioned earlier that I'd quickly kind of touch on the sustainable urban drainage. Now, this is quite a wordy slide for me. I tend not to do that on PowerPoints, but I think it's important. People often ask around drainage, you know, it's the first thing that a lot of people talk about. It's either transport or it's flooding, and they're all worried about those things. And I absolutely appreciate that. Basically, for anyone on the call who doesn't know, sustainable urban drainage is basically a way of holding water and releasing it at a slower rate, so that when you have flooding incidents, you know, when we have these 100-year incidents, we can manage them a lot better, and it just manages the surface water flow. And hopefully it will have benefit on the existing site as well as the wider Barton area. I've already talked about how important biodiversity and wildlife are, and so a big part of what we do is ecological surveys to understand what existing wildlife live, use, or travel across the site, and then we look to try and improve upon that. And I've already said that we will be maintaining the tree line facing Hawkstall Road, which I think is a really important thing for the residents on Hawkstall Road. And hopefully all the things like the wildflower meadows, the community orchards and the tree planting will really boost the biodiversity value of the site. In terms of what happens next and how you can get involved, we do plan to submit an outline planning application to North Lincolnshire Council by the end of autumn, and that will basically establish the principle of development. That's what I mentioned before. So you won't get the detail of what house would be there, what the fabric of the building would look like, the homes would look like, but you will get a clear indication of the number of homes we're looking to develop, a bit of a site layout, similar to the indicative master plan. We'd really like to see and hear your views on that, on what we've shared so far. Any benefits you think the community could benefit from our development. And what I've done there, I've left my contact details. If you want to get in touch, I appreciate you might not have the questions or answer the questions or comments that you want to leave now. Please take those details down if you want to share them afterwards. I do think some questions have come in on the chat, which is excellent. So I will run through those in a second. And we've got the Q&A session now. So if you just bear with me one moment, my team are kindly pulling together the chat for me, which you've all left great comments in, and we'll get going. How many homes will be affordable? A really great question, and what I'll do, I will hand over to Joe now, and hopefully he will take that question. Joe, are you there?
Yeah, thanks, Jeannie. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, that's perfect.
Yes, so in terms of affordable homes, we're looking at delivering 20% on site, which would be policy compliant with the North Lincolnshire requirements. In terms of everything that we are looking to deliver on site, of all matters, whether it's ecology or affordable homes, drainage requirements, it will be policy compliant where possible. And that's to make sure it's the maximum compliance with council requirements.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Joe. Next question, what have we got? What is happening with the new Barton Relief Link Road and how will it affect this development? I think, Steve, you're probably best placed to answer that. Are you okay unmuting and answering that one? Please?
Yes, that's fine. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, what is happening with the new Barton Relief Road and how will it affect our development? So currently, the Relief Road, it's obviously not being led by ourselves. It's being led by the councillors. At the moment, we're working with the councillors to try and determine what the position is, how it's going to be brought forward, what is the design of the Relief Road. And obviously, one of the key items that we have to consider is how does it tie in with our development. Now, at the moment, we've allowed for a few items. The proposed route of the link road currently runs through land to the very south of the site, which is currently under our control. So we're looking to potentially almost dedicate the land to allow the relief road to happen. In terms of the access through our site, the access point that's positioned on Brig Road, the reason that we've pushed it south of the existing development that is located on Brig Road is that effectively we can allow at a later date a link to be created from the spine road that runs through our site to the east and to tie in with the Barton Relief Road. So in terms of to answer the question, we're currently working with the councillors to see how we can deliver the relief road, how we can help it. But we're making sure that our development proposals can tie in and can work in with whatever solution is brought forward. I think that's it, Jeannie.
Thanks for that, Steve. Steve, you might as well stay unmuted for a moment. There's also a question, a really great question about what are the proposals for sustainable transport. Are you okay covering that one also, please?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, the nearest bus service is quite a distance from the site, and the bus services in general, sort of at this side of Barton-upon-Humber, we don't believe it's particularly great. So one of the things that we're looking at the moment is we're working with the Just Go service, which is the on-demand service that's currently working across North Lincolnshire. We're currently working with them to see if we can route a bus effectively through our site. So that would be coming from the leisure centre, travelling down Brig Road to the south, using the new spine road that's located through our site, and then exiting up at the northern end and heading back down Tofts Road. Now, at the moment, there's obviously a pinch point on Tofts Road. We'll be looking to widen that as it's very southern end to allow for the bus to travel through. And that would provide, obviously, a sustainable mode of transport to not just the residents of our site, but also to the existing residents in and around Brig Road and Tofts Road, which currently is not provided. So that bus service is, like I say, it's currently under negotiation, and we're currently working with the bus provider to make sure we can provide that sustainable mode of transport.
Thanks for that, Steve. That's brilliant. Joe, I'm going to call you in for this question, if that's all right. We've had one. Does banks intend to build these properties ourselves, or will we be looking to sell the land again at a profit once planning permission has been granted? If it's granted, I'll add on to the end of there. You okay covering that one, Joe?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Jeannie. Yeah, so Banks Group as Jeannie's mentioned, we submit outline planning applications, and our role is that we act as a master developer. So we basically get permission on behalf of the landowner and package up the land and then get the planning permission in place, which will then be presented to house builders. So in the short answer to that question is that banks aren't house builders. We just act as master developers, which basically means that we get planning permission for the land.
Brilliant, thank you for that, Joe. Okay, a couple more questions. If anyone has any others, please drop them in the question chat. That would be brilliant, or the question function rather than the chat. Steve, if you're happy taking what sizes are the properties going to be? It's quite an interesting question.
Yeah, of course. Basically, we provide a range as properties, generally between 2 to 5 bedroom. Obviously, we have to provide 20% of that is affordable housing. So affordables typically your 2 bedroom or your 3 bedroom properties. The rest will be a mix of 3 bedrooms that are slightly larger, i.e. not affordable properties, 4 bedrooms and 5 bedrooms. So a whole host of housing across the site. Obviously, it'll all be mixed apart. We wouldn't just stick all of the affordable housing in a single corner of the development. We would space it out so that you get a real range of different sized properties throughout the full development.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Steve. Joe, I think we've got possibly a couple more coming in. Just this one, how will the proposal relate to the existing housing in Barton? And if you have anything to add around the size of the properties, please do, or any other questions.
Yeah, thanks, Jeannie. Yeah, just to add to what Steve was saying about, he mentioned about the affordables, so 20% of the overall quantum of housing on the site will be affordable housing, and that'll be a mixture of tenures, so there will be some ownership, some social rent, and the different aspects of affordable housing will be represented in accordance with the council requirements. In terms of how it relates to the existing housing in Barton, our architects have worked on an appraisal of the existing architecture on Hawkstow Road, including densities and design and layout. We are relating the new development to the existing housing, so it will retain as much of the character as possible, and where possible it will also enhance the character. So we are trying to incorporate outward facing development, which is a generally accepted positive aspect of urban design, which encourages active frontages, which has been proven to decrease crime in neighbourhoods as well. So as well as the positive design, we are looking at social aspects to integrate within the design of the overall master plan. And likewise with what Steve was saying, the mixture of housing, that will also relate to what is in the immediate vicinity and what is identified as a need for the council.
Thanks for that, Joe. We've had a couple of questions come through that I'll answer if that's okay. So we've had one, which is how come this site has been allowed to be developed, considering there is a site opposite Keegar Homes? And there's also been another question around have you submitted a pre-app for the site? So they're probably interlinked, I would say. So yes, we have submitted pre-app to North Lincolnshire Council. And in terms of the first question around how come it's been allowed to be developed, it hasn't been allowed yet. So this was what I was talking about at the beginning around the stage that we're at. So we're at what's called pre-application stage. So we haven't submitted a planning application yet. We're currently at the engaging stage. Obviously, once we submit an application, the council will then begin consultation officially. And so at the moment, this is more about us coming out with the community, let you know of our intentions, get some feedback from you about your thoughts on it, how you can influence it, perhaps shape the designs a little bit. We're obviously working in conjunction, well, we're discussing or talking with the council around our intentions to submit an application, which is obviously the pre-app portion of the development stage. So no, it's not allowed yet. We obviously have to submit an application, which then is assessed independently by the local authority. All those assessments we talked about, they'll all be reviewed, and then it will go in front of a planning committee of local council members, and then they make a decision whether to approve or reject the application. So that's the process. But yes, we have submitted pre-app, and we'll be looking to submit a planning application in the next few months. We've had a really interesting question, which was definitely not one that I was expecting, and Steve's kindly raised his hand to answer it. So someone's put that it may not be a concern to everyone, but I am really interested in it. But someone's a keen astronomer, and they have concerns regarding light pollution, and to what extent have we tried to mitigate this? Steve, I'll hand over to you, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, not a question I've come across before, but I mean, typically the key sources of light pollution, obviously from the development, is mainly street lighting. Now, North Links has street lighting standards, and basically that directs us to make sure that we install LED lighting as standard. Now, obviously, LED can have a far greater focused beam than what would be your sort of standard or your older, what is now older incandescent bulbs. So due to the standards that North Links put in, any developer that comes through and brings forward any new developments in North Links should be using LED lighting. Obviously, the LED lighting ensures that we do keep light pollution to a minimum, but obviously it also has other benefits such as you know, reduced carbon usage, etc., longer lifespans, less maintenance, and as I say, that's defined and enforced on us by North Links Council, who will ultimately adopt and maintain the street lighting on the development.
Brilliant, thanks, Steve. And I think we have one final question that's just come in. Will we get to see your architect's feasibility study and appraisals that show the evidence that you have reflected the character of Barton in your proposals, such as density, etc.? Hard facts and figures instead of taking your word for it, please. Happy to hand that one over to Joe, if he's able to unmute.
Yeah, thanks, Shania. Yeah, it's a good question. We are looking at that, as I mentioned, and that will form part of the design and access statement, which will be submitted to accompany the plans for the outline planning application. So you'll be able to see that as part of the application when it does go live with the council, and the council should be consulting residents, and there'll be site notices, and they should follow the due diligence in terms of publicising the application in accordance with the legal requirements. Just checking the wording of the question, see if there's anything else. Evidence. Yeah, likewise with the reflecting the character of Barton, there will be an appraisal of the architectural styles of the other houses, and there is a justified approach to the design of the scheme. And it's not just going to be a copy and paste development, it is reflecting local character. Thanks, Julie.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Joe. Now, I think that is all the questions we've had today. Unless anyone wants to raise anything, please just pop quickly in. I'll give you 1 minute. I'd like to just thank everyone. I really appreciate we had some excellent questions there. I'd like to thank the team for taking the time to answer them. And again, thank you for coming along. If you have any further questions about the development or anything at all around Barton and what we're up to, please just use the contact details I shared with you earlier. Hopefully, because we've sent through a link, I must have your email address in our system, so please just drop through an email, anything you have, and we'll make sure those questions are answered. We will put all of these questions up on the FAQ system of our website, so that the residents can read the questions that were raised, and hopefully they can also get their answers. We'll equally do the same from our exhibition in person tomorrow. But other than that, I think I'll say thank you very much to everyone, and we'll finish the webinar there. Thank you for taking the time to come along.